A child wearing a crown, aboard a rocking ship in the Shimonoseki Strait, sits a 6-year-old boy dressed in imperial robes, far too heavy for his small frame. He does not fully understand what is happening around him, only that the adults who love him look afraid in a way he has never seen before. This child is Antoku, Emperor of Japan, and within the hour, the sea around his ship will run red. He has never known a peaceful reign. He has only ever known flight, war, and the quiet devotion of the grandmother who now kneels beside him, watching the horizon for ships that will decide whether he lives to see nightfall. A dynasty built on borrowed time, Antoku was never meant to rule during peace. Enthroned as an infant, he became a symbol carried into war by the Taira clan, the powerful family that controlled him and, through him, claimed to control Japan itself. For years the Taira had crushed rivals and ruled from the shadow of the throne. But the Minamoto clan, humiliated and scattered a generation earlier, had regrouped, and by the 1180s their armies were winning back everything the Taira once took from them. Kyoto fell. The Taira fled west, carrying their child emperor and Japan's 3 sacred imperial treasures with them, running out of capital and running out of time. The grandmother who would not let go beside young Antoku throughout this desperate flight is Taira no Tokiko, known to history as Lady Ni, widow of the clan's late patriarch and the boy's own grandmother. She has buried a husband, watched her family's empire crumble province by province, and now carries the full weight of protecting her grandson through a war that is no longer winnable. She does not intend to let the enemy decide what happens to him. Whatever plan is forming in her mind as the Minamoto fleet closes in, it is not a plan built around surrender. The net closes at sea. By the spring of 1185, the Taira have nowhere left to run. Their last stronghold falls, and their fleet retreats into the narrow strait at Dan-no-ura, hoping to make a final stand where the currents favor local knowledge over numbers. Opposing them is Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a young general whose ruthless brilliance has already shattered Taira defenses at Ichi-no-tani through a nearly impossible cliffside assault. He commands roughly 800 ships against the Taira's smaller fleet. The morning tide briefly favors the defenders. It will not favor them for long. Turning tide, turning fortune. The battle opens with archers exchanging volleys across open water before the fighting collapses into brutal close-quarters combat, boat against boat, blade against blade. For hours the Taira hold their ground, the strong morning currents pushing the Minamoto fleet backward. Then in the early afternoon, the tide itself turns, and the same waters that once protected the Taira now drive their ships helplessly toward the enemy. A Taira commander who had promised loyalty defects at the worst possible moment, revealing which ship carries the emperor. From that instant, every Minamoto arrow and blade has one target above all others. A betrayal from within. The defection is more than a tactical blow. It strips away the last advantage the Taira had left, their ability to hide the one life that mattered most to the outcome of the entire war. Minamoto forces now know exactly which vessel to encircle, and they close in with total focus, cutting through the Taira line ship by ship. Aboard the imperial vessel, the sound of approaching oars grows louder. Lady Ni understands what encirclement means. It means capture, humiliation, and a child emperor paraded before the very clan that destroyed his family. She has already decided this will not happen. The sacred treasures. Before the final ships close in, the Taira take one more decision no army can stop. Alongside the emperor travel the 3 sacred treasures of the imperial line, a mirror, a jewel, and a sword named Kusanagi, symbols older than any single ruler and considered essential to the legitimacy of the throne itself. Rather than let them fall into Minamoto hands alongside the boy who carries their authority, members of the Taira prepare to take the regalia into the water with them. What the sea does not return, no victorious general can claim. The last question accounts passed down through the tale of the hike describe a small, frightened boy, asking his grandmother where they are being taken. It is one of the only intimate moments preserved from these final minutes, a child seeking reassurance in the middle of a collapsing world. Lady Ni, dressed in the dark robes of mourning she has worn since her husband's death, gathers Antoku close. She tells him, according to the same account, that beneath the waves waits another capital, a peaceful one, where he need not be afraid. Whether every word survives exactly as spoken, the moment itself is remembered as the Empire's most quietly devastating farewell. Into the water with the sacred sword secured at her waist, and her grandson held tightly against her, Lady Ni steps to the edge of the ship. Around her, other Taira nobles and warriors are making the same choice, refusing capture, refusing the humiliation that awaits survivors of a lost war. She does not hesitate. She carries the 6-year-old Emperor of Japan over the rail and into the strait, and the cold water closes over both of them within seconds. Somewhere beneath the surface, the Kusanagi sword slips from her grasp into the dark, gone from human hands for the rest of history. A sea full of sacrifice. Antoku and his grandmother are far from alone in the water. Across the strait, Taira nobles, commanders, and attendants choose the same fate rather than surrender to Yoshitsune's advancing forces. Some leap in full armor, ensuring the weight will not let them resurface. Others are cut down mid-flight, fighting to the last possible moment. Within a short span of brutal, chaotic minutes, the ruling family that once controlled the emperor and, through him, the whole of Japan, is reduced to bodies and drifting banners on a strait that will carry their name in Japanese memory for the next 800 years. What the sea gave back. In the aftermath, Minamoto forces managed to recover 2 of the 3 sacred treasures, the mirror and the jewel, pulled from the water or salvaged from surviving ships. The sword, Kusanagi, is never found. Its disappearance becomes one of Japanese history's enduring mysteries, a physical loss that later chroniclers treat as symbolic, as though the old imperial order itself had gone down with it into the strait. Some later accounts claim a replica had already replaced the original centuries before this battle. The uncertainty itself becomes part of the legend, unresolved to this day. The fall completed with the emperor dead and the imperial regalia scattered or lost, Taira resistance effectively ends within hours. The surviving nobles who do not choose the sea are hunted down or captured, including the clan's nominal head, who is taken alive while his relatives died around him, choosing a different ending. Minamoto no Yoshitsune's victory at Dan-no-ura closes the Genpei War entirely, clearing the path for his elder brother Yoritomo to establish the first shogunate in Japanese history. Power shifts permanently away from the old imperial court and into the hands of the military government that will define Japan for the next 700 years. A boy remembered in legend. Antoku's short life leaves behind more myth than record. Fishermen in the strait later claim to see small crabs along the shore bearing patterns on their shells that resemble angry samurai faces, and local legend insists that these are the spirits of the drowned Taira warriors, unable to leave the waters where they died. Shrines rise near Dan-no-ura dedicated to the boy emperor, and for centuries afterward, sailors passing through the strait speak carefully, respectfully, as though something is still listening beneath the surface. A child who never chose his crown becomes in death one of the most mourned figures in Japanese history. The strait that remembers today. The waters at Shimonoseki run calm most days. Ferries and fishing boats crossing where warships once burned and sank. But the story of a grandmother's final choice, made in the last minutes of a doomed war, has never fully faded from Japanese memory. It is retold in theater, in poetry, in the quiet reverence still paid at shrines along the shore. A 6-year-old emperor went into the sea believing, if only for a moment, that something gentler waited beneath the waves. What actually waited was history's memory, and 800 years later, it has still not let him go.